The Dominican Republic just dropped a major fiscal reform bill, and I did something nobody asked me to. I read it. And in today's video, I'm going to break down for you 3 things that directly affect Americans, Canadians, expats looking to move or invest here, and a few other things that you should know even if it doesn't directly impact your wallet. If you're new here, my name is Jamie Gruber. I left a $400,000 executive position in the United States and moved to the Dominican Republic in 2022 with my family. I purchased my own home, land, and an investment property. And on this channel, I share all of my experiences and thoughts about life in DR, investing in DR, the economy in DR, and so on. So let's be clear on what this is. This is a proposal. It is not passed. It is not law. It is not in place yet. And the last time this was attempted, I believe in 2024 by the president and his team at the time, it didn't go very well. It was widely panned and eventually it was killed because it just was a very unpopular fiscal reform proposal. But the reason they do need fiscal reform then and now is to increase tax revenue in order to go from a speculative credit rating to an investment grade credit rating. It's kind of like going from a 500 credit score to a 700 credit score. Interest rates are lower. More people are willing to invest or give you credit. In terms of a country, it means you can refinance out of high interest debt and you can attract more foreign direct investment and even attract investment from things like pension funds and hedge funds, which can't legally invest in anything speculative grade. It has to be investment grade. But even more so right now, this fiscal reform bill is also sort of a stopgap due to the increased cost of subsidizing fuel costs that have popped up due to many factors in the world today. But again, not passed, proposed, has to go to Congress still, and I'll tell you my take at the end of this video. So here's the first thing that would affect an American, a Canadian buying, investing, living down here, and that is cap gains. Currently, the capital gains tax here in the Dominican Republic, if you sell a property for an individual, not a business, but an individual, is 27%. So you sell a property with a $100,000 gain, you would owe $27,000 to the Dominican government. This proposal actually drops that from 27% down to 10%. Way lower. And it really does something interesting for American buyers in particular. Americans need to file a tax return no matter where you live, no matter where you make money. Doesn't matter. That's how the U.S. works. And in the U.S., the cap gains rate is somewhere between 15 and 20%. But what's true then and would still be true now is that you don't pay taxes in both places. Taxes offset between the two countries. So today, where in DR it's 27% and in the United States it's 15 to 20%, you'd pay the 27% to the DR, and because that's more than the 15 to 20 in the U.S., you wouldn't owe the U.S. anything. But now, if this 27% drops to 10%, then you'd pay 10% to the Dominican Republic, and then you'd owe the additional 5 to 10%, since the U.S. is 15 to 20% cap gains tax, to the U.S. Let's make it real. $100,000 in gain. The new proposal says you would owe 10% to DR, which is $10,000. The United States, let's say if your cap gains rate is 20%, would say you owe us $20,000. But the U.S. would say, oh, but we see you paid 10 to DR, so therefore you can take the 10 off and just pay us 10K. Either way, you're paying $20,000 or $15,000 if your U.S. cap gains rate is 15%. So you're not paying double tax, but before you would pay all the DR and the U.S. was lower, and now that's flipping. You'd pay the DR first 10% and then the balance to the United States. By the way, on this and all of this, I'm giving info, insights. I'm not a tax advisor. I'm not a financial professional. I'll disclaim that everywhere. Talk to somebody who knows what they're doing, and I can share a place where you can meet some of those folks here in just a minute. The number 2 thing you should know as an American or a Canadian, if you want to hand down a property or business here to your kids, it just got a lot cheaper to do so. The way it stands right now, if you die and your heirs inherit, say, property that you own here, you pay a 3% transfer tax. But a living transfer is 27%. Under this proposal, however, that 27% drops all the way down to 3%. Let me give you an example of why this matters. I have a property in a place called Maple Suites, a 1-bedroom apartment that we purchased with Boardwalk Developments. Recently, I've been thinking about getting a second apartment in that same building since there are a few left. And by doing so, I'd have 2 apartments free and clear that I could hand down to my kids. In my mind, my kids are 11 and 8. Better than a 529 plan. I can sign over the properties to them and they've got that equity and or cash flow that they can use. Again, I'm just generally thinking about this. I think I'd want to still stay on title, but you get the point. If I were to do that while still living right now, I'm going to pay 27% in tax to the Dominican government for that transfer. But this proposal says I would pay the same 3% if I transfer it while I'm alive as I would if I had passed away. So if I'm holding these properties in my name, not in a company or entity name, I can make that transfer and pay a few $1,000s in taxes versus tens of thousands. And that would be, by the way, on the total value, not on the equity gain, but the total value of the property. The same applies if you're handing a business down or any other asset as an individual to somebody else. In my mind, I think what it means is DR is saying, hey, we're having to wait for people to die to collect the tax on the transfer of property or the transfer of a business. And if there are some people that want to do that now, and we can still take in that 3% today, sort of get that revenue now instead of later if we even out the tax margin. I don't know if that's why, but that's just my take on why that happened. But again, all proposed, nothing passed yet. And talk to a financial professional, not me. All right, the third thing Americans, Canadians, expats should know about buying property here is if you own a rental property, the individual tax rate just went up. So if you own a property in your name as an individual, currently you would pay 10% income tax on income generated by your rental property. The proposal is going to make that go from 10 to 15%. Now, what's up for debate is if you own it as an individual, are you able to write off expenses like you do in the United States? I've talked to lawyers, I've talked to financial professionals, and there's a lot of discussion around that. Some say if it's in your name as an individual, there are no write-offs. None. Not any expenses can be written off against the income. So if you take $5,000 in rental income in a month, there's no legitimate write-offs if you're holding the property in your name. Therefore, you're going from $500 a month to, what would that be, $750 a month if it goes from 10 to 15%. Others would say there are avenues and pathways for you to be able to write off expenses even as an individual owner. So let's say you can, and you write down $3,000 worth of expenses, leaving you $2,000 in net income that's taxable. 10% will be $200, 15% will be $300. Yeah, that math works. So in either case, it goes up a bit. Question is whether or not that amount really matters for you. Let me give you the example on Maple Suites. I'm going to be renting out my property, or maybe two properties, for $1,500 a month to where veterans are VIP for 2 to 3 years. It's a really cool perk, actually. You can learn more about that if you want to go down in the description below. Click the referral link. But currently, if I'm not able to write anything off and I'm taking in $1,500, I'm paying $150 to the Dominican government in rental income tax. That's the way I read this right now. That would go up to 15%, which would be, let's see, $150, so $225. So I'd be spending an extra $75 a month. Be honest, for me, whatever. I'm sure we can find ways to offset that cost in other areas of our life. But it's a way to capture additional income, tax income for the Dominican government, which, look, my take on government in general, any of them, DR, US, Canada, there's so much waste. I don't like the idea of finding new taxes as much as I like the idea of eliminating waste in the taxes that you currently collect. I think I can get an amen on that from the left, the right, the up, the down, any political position that's out there. We're more united than we think we are, people, especially you Americans out there. We Americans. We fake division, but we want the same things. Anyway, not the end of the world, but something that you should know about. If this proposal passes in its current form, the rental income tax rate will jump up by 5%. All right, those are the 3 things that you should know that probably affect you if you own property here. I'm also going to give you 4 things that, even if it's not going to impact you, you should know about. But real quick, I mentioned before about finding financial professionals and other advisors that can help you, whether it's attorneys, USDR advisors, accountants, you name it. I'd encourage you to take a look at joining my DR Inner Circle. This is not a fan club. This is a community of real people that are living in, investing in, or moving to the Dominican Republic with real conversations on tax strategy, places to invest. We even have groups of people buying land in different parts of the country, pooling their assets, getting together because they met as part of this amazing community. I mean, we have a ton of features: Q&A weekly, monthly office hours with my attorney, get all your legal questions answered, state of the market from top real estate agents on a monthly basis, an incredibly engaged community, and even now, an AI solution that'll let you summarize chats that get too long, or you can ask it for any recommendations anybody's made for a handyman in Santo Domingo, or a curtain person in Puerto Plata, or somebody to help you ship your car no matter where you live in the country. We call that Jamie GPT. Really cool feature, all part of the Inner Circle experience. Here's a QR code that you can scan, jump into the Inner Circle, and be a part of this incredible community of 1,200 plus members and growing. Oh, and we meet in person. Just saying. IRL, as the kids say. It's in real life. I didn't know what that meant either, so I had to. All right, here's 4 things that you should know. Number 1 is, in this proposal, there would be a tax amnesty window for you to kind of get everything cleared up and taken care of before the government says, hey, now you owe penalties and fines and all that good stuff. So whether it's old property transfers or other types of exposed capital that should have been taxed and wasn't, I mean, for whatever reason, there will be an opportunity to get with your attorney, your accountant, go through it all, shore up your tax situation without any sort of penalty or anything else for a period of time if and when this proposal gets passed. So there you go. The second thing is interesting, especially if you're a business owner, this will impact you. And it has to do with corporate income tax rates and corporate income tax filings. So there's 3 tiers of businesses that are outlined here. And it's really hard to decipher how you exactly bucket these businesses, but I'll do my best with what I've researched. But again, consult a professional. The proposal includes a 3% tax increase on revenue generated by businesses in DR that do over $1 billion pesos per year in revenue. Top line, that proposal of 3% is to increase it that much for 3 years. I believe it goes from 27 to 30% on those businesses. And that is significant. Because as an economic guy, as a small government guy, 3% even on a large business does force them to make certain decisions with staff, with cutbacks, with perks, benefits, whatever, even though it may feel like nothing compared to how much revenue they make. There's a lot of expense that goes into running a business. And when you go after the big guy, it does impact the little guy in many, many cases. I mean, look at New York. Mamdani goes out and actually calls out an individual. By the way, I'm sorry, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. That is the most narcissistic, dangerous thing that a mayor could ever do. You want to tax the wealthy? Go for it. But to call out the guy's name and point at the building and place that he lives and say this evil individual essentially needs to pay more? How dumb are you? Bad political move. I don't care how you voted. Now look, they're talking about halting a project that's going to bring in a lot of jobs and tax revenue through those people that are in those jobs and moving it to Florida. So I'm not a huge fan of just like, oh, the big companies need to pay more, because it's never the big guy that pays more. It's the little guy. But anyway, tier one is companies over 1 billion pesos in annual revenue go up 3% for 3 years. This is about 1,000 companies total in the country. It's not a big, huge slice of businesses here. The second tier is small businesses. Let's put this between like 150,000 and I don't know, maybe like $1 million US per year. And even in that regard, like I got to do the math to figure out like whatever, but small businesses are in that range from everything that I could tell. Talk to a professional. What happens right now with small businesses, they have to pay something called the anticipo, like anticipated tax. Regardless of whether or not you have any revenue, the government says, we think you're going to make this much, so pay this much per month for 12 months. So if you have no cash flow for 3 months, you're still paying in January, February, and March, those 3 months with no cash flow, whatever the anticipo is. In this proposal, those small businesses, I think a little over 150K annually in revenue would go from 12 monthly anticipo payments down to 3 annually. It just allows them to have some cash flow built up to pay in 3 installments over the course of the year, instead of like, I've had no revenue for a month or two, or my revenue's down, but I still have to pay what you think I should have made. That can be hard on a small business, on any business. And then one step down from that is micro enterprise, which I would probably classify as under 150 US a year. I think for them, anticipo is eliminated entirely. You're going to pay based on what you actually made that year. So in some ways, it simplifies the tax code for businesses a little bit, makes it a little bit less arduous, less complicated for them to figure out, like, how am I going to come up with the money to pay when I don't have the money right now to pay what you say I should make, government. But in any case, whether you're a large business paying 3% more for 3 years, all the way down to a micro enterprise not having to deal with anticipo anymore, there'll be some differences for businesses across the board. The third thing you should know is a slight tick up in fees for banks and airlines. Currently on bank transfers within the country from bank A to bank B in DR, there is a 0.15% transfer tax that you pay, or fee or whatever that you pay for that transfer. That's going to go from 0.15 to 0.20%. So like, even if you were moving $100,000 US per year across banks here in DR, which is a lot, most people are not doing that, that would increase your total fee burden going from 0.15 to 0.20 by $50. So is it more? Yes. Is it more burdensome for people on the lower end? Yes. But it's not a huge step up, but it does give them a little bit more revenue when you consider it across the board. In addition, airline tickets would go up by $10. For most people that can fly, an extra $10 is not going to be something they notice, but for many people, it's real cash. In addition, if you vape or gamble, you'll pay a little bit more in taxes. So they're bad habits anyway. Stop doing them. All right, and the fourth thing I would say you should know is what didn't happen. There was discussion about a digital tax on Netflix, YouTube, and other subscriptions like that. And that is not in this proposal, interestingly. And I'll be honest, when I think about that tax, I mean, really, it's going to impact you and me. You who's watching this video and me. Most local Dominicans don't have Netflix subscriptions or YouTube premium accounts. So for us to pay an extra $1 a month or whatever it is in taxes seemed like, yeah, why not just go for it, I guess. But maybe they figured it wasn't a big deal, so they got rid of it. And it just looks good optically for them. In addition, they did not touch the ITBs, the 18% sales tax essentially that exists down here. There was some discussion about that increasing, stayed the same right where it is. In fact, I think that is probably one of the biggest things that killed the last tax reform proposal, was trying to take more tax on that 18%. It's already a big number. So here's my take, just doing some analysis and talking to some people locally. This looks like a very passable bill compared to the last time this was proposed, where there was wide sweeping changes to a whole bunch of different things. In addition, quietly behind the scenes, you see things like Confitor, which eliminates property tax and transfer taxes on purchases that are approved for it. kind of slowly being eliminated without it being legally eliminated. There's a lot more scrutiny on it. There's less and less developers that are kind of buying into offering confitore property. And you see other moves like increasing the threshold for legal residency by investment from $200,000 to $500,000. Could do that in another video, but my point is they're doing other things behind the scenes that do and don't affect tax revenue, that recognize that there's increased foreign direct investment here, that the cost of real estate has gone up, and they're looking for ways to pull from those that maybe have as opposed to trying to pull from those that don't. Meaning local Dominicans don't really see a major change to what they have happening day to day. The IPIS didn't go up and so on. So again, I think this is way more passable. When the first proposal came out a couple of years ago, what I had said was I believe that it was strategic to put out something so unpopular that they knew they could kill and then optically be able to say, hey, we heard you and we killed it. We got you. We heard you. We're going to go back to the drawing board. Because they wanted to propose something that they truly wanted, but knew that no matter what they proposed, it was going to generate resistance. So if they proposed this first, it would get resistance. So why not propose something crazy over here, kill it so that you can show you're listening to the people, and then propose what you truly want so that it feels more moderate, it feels more reasonable. Maybe I'm being cynical. In fact, some people have said that the president actually fired the guy who proposed the first fiscal reform bill, and maybe he did. But I'm sticking to my theory. It's my channel. Here's what I'll promise to you. As things change, as new proposals are made, or as it goes through and maybe even gets passed, I'll keep you updated here on YouTube with whatever my thoughts are and whatever the real news is. But again, what I want you to take from this video is, hey, here's some information about it, here's my take, but please consult with the right professionals for your situation depending on which of these affect you, if any. And again, I would highly encourage you, hang out in the inner circle. Meet people like Javier and Marilyn who have expertise in the US and in the Dominican Republic. Connect with Jillian, who's helping people that want to move to Jarabacoa. Listen to Luis and Carlos and others get deep into the tax strategy side of what living here is. And all of our other amazing Inner Circle members out there, I thank you for being a part of it, and I hope to see more of you jump into this incredible community. Again, QR code's right here if you want to take a look at it. Would love to have you along for the ride. Now, here's the crazy part. In addition to tax reform, there's other economic news here that I think is really cool, including a spaceport being built in the southern part of the country in the next year or two. At least that's what's proposed, but I like to go deep and figure out, will it actually happen? So what I did was made this video for you to kind of check out what I believe is going to happen with this proposed spaceport, why it's going there, and all the little ins and outs of what you need to know. So click on that video to watch next, and I'll see you on the next one.